This is actually the first of the series of mixed nuts. This one is, I guess you could say, my first experience with what was supposed to be an actual relationship, if you haven't caught on to that by now. I did an introduction of what Mixed Nuts was all about, so hopefully you check that out before you get into each of these series so that you understand the point and the format. So, yes. And so with that being said, part one, or episode one of the Mixed Nuts series is called The Ghost, or simply we gonna call him TG. The first time I went out with TG, we met at a neighborhood bar that was not too far from my place at the time. He was already inside when I arrived, and it's like I saw that bald head before anything. He was light skin complexion, 6'1", tattooed, of course, with these lips that I couldn't help but stare at constantly. TG stood up with this big grin as he reached to hug me. His hugs gave me comfort and made me feel at ease. He had this muscular build that made me feel safe. His voice was masculine yet soothing and gentle. What made me intrigued by him was not so much of the questions that he was asking, but the way that he would lean in, awaiting for my response to each. I felt as if he had absorbed every word that I had let out. I felt that he was genuinely interested. We sat and chatted for close to 2 hours at the bar. I noticed that he was pounding his beers back like a champ. I had ordered a Malibu and pineapple, as Malibu and pineapple is my go-to drink when I do not want to get drunk. Or my go-to drink when I'm just like in chill status, you know? By the time I was on my second drink, he had already completed 4 bottles minimum. By the way I was feeling and the way that he continued to look at me, I knew that this night would end differently than I had originally planned. We agreed that we wanted to talk more and maybe go somewhere else. So with that, I had what the hell? My bad. Okay. So by the way that I was feeling and the way that he continued to look at me, I knew that this night would end differently than I had originally planned. We agreed that we wanted to talk more and maybe go somewhere else, so I had suggested my place since it was closer and I was so excited about living on my own. This was the time when I had got my first own or apartment by myself. I wanted to low-key show him that although I was younger, I was able to handle myself well. We went to a video store. How long ago this was. When we went to the video store, we went and rented a few movies. I was so interested in the way that he kept staring at me and finding reasons to gently brush against my body as we were video shopping. I remember picking up the 40-year-old virgin and trying to get home quickly. There wasn't a debate at all about the selection. Needless to say, the movie was barely watched that night. Feelings evolved, but quite a few red flags were up that I failed to have paid attention to. Our conversations were all via text. TG would call me, but he would call me most of the time when I was at work. He only came to visit me when he got off work early because he worked graveyard shift. His first I love you was via text. And he even had the audacity to express wanting to marry me, guess what? Also via text. Please let that be a lesson. I spoke with his 2 children. They were young at the time. On the phone a few times. So in my mind, I felt that everything was cool. I think they were about 4 and 6 at the time. In between dealing with this guy, there were multiple occasions when he would just disappear from communication for days, and sometimes he would disappear for weeks. Do you disappear like that from people that you love? I don't know. I kept telling myself that maybe he was just a busy father. I knew nothing about raising children and trying to balance work and a quote-unquote relationship. I remember finding myself searching his name in the obituaries because of the duration of silence that often occurred. It got so bad one time I showed up at his job and sat right in front of him like, what the fuck, dude? What's up? What's the problem? Silly me, I kept returning, falling for those hugs and written I love yous. It felt convincing when he verbally expressed his I love you. During one of his late night visits, he did that. It was enough to let myself settle for the same treatment for over 2 years. So, like, 2 years, I'm dating the damn ghost. You know what I'm saying? I remember getting teased and everything by, like, family and stuff because they were like, oh, does he even exist? And then it was like one night, or it was a night, I think it was a night. My sister was over my house and he was there. And I was like, oh no, somebody is going to meet you. Somebody's meeting you. So my sister got to meet him. And she was like the only one that got to meet him. Plus, like, there was a mutual friend, which I ain't even going to expose that, but there was a mutual friend that knew him. Like, knew him. So that was interesting. Let's see. So my lease on my apartment was ending. Via text, he ensured that he was ready for me to move in with him and the kids. I gave my proper written notice for the leasing office, gave away and sold the majority of my belongings that I felt were bulky, and I felt I was just floating. I just felt like I was on top of the world. What ended up happening is my great grandmother had ended up passing away, and there were like a lot of ugly situations surrounding that. Getting her situated and, buried properly, and her legal matters, things like that. There was a lot of drama behind. So it caused a lot of stress, not just on me, but like my family in general. But I don't know. With that, I would have expected to have had some type of support, but again, the man that loved me was nowhere to be found. I wasn't able to reverse my 30-day notice, so I ended up moving back with my mom, whom, like, huge shout out for that time, because I don't even know if I've ever expressed how much that meant to me, because, like, she was understanding and like how I felt. She calmed me. She kind of got me, made sure I got my head back in the game instead of sitting back feeling sorry for myself. Like, I'm sitting there, I'm like, damn, like losing my grandmother, then having to deal with the loss of this mother that was disappearing on me and shit. Like, man, it was a lot going on. Didn't have no place to stay. I sold all my stuff. Like, what the hell else could go wrong is basically how I was feeling at that time. Is what it is. Is what it is. Also, another little tall tale sign that I should have got with him. I remember this was after he had did the little fake ass proposal. I had told my grandma about it, and she ended up cooking this whole meal, had my family over there. He was supposed to come over for dinner to meet them, and that bitch didn't show up. He didn't show up. Not only did he not show up, he didn't even tell me that he wasn't coming. So I remember that night. I felt so small. That same night I was with some friends earlier, and we had did a visit with a psychic, like she was a palm reader, I think. I don't know, whatever. Some way, shape, or form, she was a psychic. And she did tell me that he wasn't the one for me. I remember that reading because I was so pissed off at her. Because I'm like, she don't know what she's talking about. He is the one for me. He's not going to disappoint me. And sure enough, that night, I didn't even mention what was happening. And it was crazy. I remember that reading vividly. I did not mention what was happening to her. And for her to have came up with information like that in there, like, I was so mad at her. She didn't even know me. I didn't even know her. Oh, baby. So basically, with all of this stuff going on, surrounding my great grandmother's death and all of that stuff, like he couldn't even be there for me. He couldn't tell me, couldn't speak to me, couldn't even be like, just be a man about it. Didn't happen. One day I was sitting at work and he ended up texting me. It's like, keep in mind, I had been blowing up his phone. I had been blowing him up constantly because I wanted to know something. Oh, dear Lord. Hold on a sec. So when he hit me up via text, his first words to me, hello, beautiful. Before I could even fathom the thought of responding, he had sent the message behind that stating that he had found someone else that he was more compatible with. With that, he couldn't figure out the proper time to tell me. I didn't even have the energy to address him with all of the bitches that he was in my mind. And then I said, you know what? It's not even worth my energy. So much was running through my head, I was already exhausted. I simply responded by saying, have fun. So that was the end of that. I think that's more than simple. Fast forward, I want to say it had to have been like 4, maybe 5 years. It was so much that happened. So fast forward in time, because I didn't even notice the kids. I should have seen the kids. I remember them from pictures and stuff. But I had seen him. I was at a foodie fest one year. I seen him. And it was kind of weird because I wasn't trying to catch his attention. I was kind of looking and staring because I was trying to make sure that that was him indeed. It was. What happened is that what happened was that I seen him when I did notice that it was him. He was in his phone, and then there was a woman that was standing with him, and she was trying to grab onto his hand, and I noticed that they both were wearing wedding rings. When we did catch each other's eye, I raised my eyebrow and I laughed. I laughed because his facial expression was basically as if he had seen a ghost. I wanted to be like, you can't look at me like I'm a ghost, bitch. You the damn ghost. But I left it alone. Just giggled and kept it pushing. I don't know. It is what it was. That day I felt at ease with the thought that the ghost was dead to me. So life carried on. The lesson that I did get from there, I never fully gave my attention to one person before, TG. So that was something at that time. Although I didn't receive the proper attention and one-on-one time that you should have in an actual relationship, I allowed my heart to feel for someone for what he was, not for what he could do for me. This was the beginning of learning how to love for internal substance despite what the women around me were trying to convey. I also learned how a father should actually love and care for his children, because I don't believe that he should have even brought his children into the picture or introduced his children to somebody that he wasn't even seriously trying to be with. Then if I could sit here and explain the facial expression, not only just the facial expression, but his body language with the night that I seen him at the foodie fest with that other lady, and then especially once I did identify the kids, I'm like, again, you look like a coward. He looked like a straight up coward. And who knew who he was talking to or texting at that time when he was in his phone, while his wife, because I know that was his wife, while his wife is sitting there trying to yearn for his attention. I don't want that. You can't give me what I need all the way through, then I don't need to be dealing with you to give it to me half-assed either. And I don't know. That's basically what I learned. Also, communication. Don't communicate with me just simply through text and think that everything is going to be okay. If I feel that we're not able to have conversations as grown-ass people through the phone, through video, or face-to-face if we're local in the same place, then what we here for? There's no point. No point at all. I don't have time for that. So that's that. So hope you enjoyed. I mean, a little shortness of TG. Don't let people ghost you. You're so much better than that. That's basically to sum it up. All right. So stay tuned for episode 2. Episode 2 is Southern Charmer. That's an interesting one. Bye.